Alrighty, hi everybody. Welcome to the Building with UMA's New Products workshop. We have Chandler and John here from our sponsor UMA. They're going to be running this workshop for you guys. So yeah, I'll leave it to you guys to get started and introduce yourselves.
Hello, yeah, cool. Thanks for that. Just before I jump in, just want to say, we're really excited to be here. We were part of the last HackMoney event, and this kind of round is really going to be summarized by us wanting to talk about the new products that we're working on at UMA, and want to get into the hands of some developers. So if anything piques your interest here, that's kind of the intention of what today is about, and we just kind of want to discuss and show off what we've been working on over the past 6 months. A quick agenda, just so that you know what's coming up. We'll just quickly introduce you to some of the UMA team members that you'll be seeing throughout the event, some of the prizes that are up for grabs at this hackathon. A quick introduction of what UMA does, but I want to be very quick on that one, and you'll see when we get to that. An introduction to the themed products that we want to be building over the next couple weeks, specifically the long short pair, KPI options, and the optimistic oracles. John will go through a demo on how to deploy and get started, and some creative ideas that kind of you can do to get started with that, and a quick little punt on some of the hiring agenda items that we want to talk about. And so if you're interested in joining the team, there are a few open roles at the moment. So just a quick introduction. I'm Chandler. I'm the growth strategist at UMA. Joining me today is John from our engineering team.
Hey, everybody. Happy to be here.
Cool. And you'll also be seeing a bunch of other people lurking around in the Discord. Melissa, Vari, Sean, and Clayton. They're a friendly bunch, so say hi when you see them. And then an extra little bit of added support. The ETHGlobal team are really kind enough to give us a dedicated hackathon support channel. This channel is a combination of UMA's community team members and the UMA team in itself. And so if you see anyone with the UMA support tag, that is someone who is will be able to kind of hear some of the questions that you have and ping the right person, whether you need some technical help, you just need some ideas creation, you need to help find some talent to kind of add to your team. And this is kind of that support tag. Quick little disclaimer, the Super Umans is our tagline for a community member at UMA in itself. So they're part of the official UMA community. All right, why do you want to hack? What are some of the prizes that are up for grabs that we want to kind of just talk about today? So the first one, we will be giving away $2,000 for the most creative use of our optimistic oracle. By the way, each of these prizes that I'll list out, we'll go through the products in themselves later on. This will be judged by the UMA team and the community team. So a combination of UMA and our community will judge this one. The next one will be the team that comes up with the best community-based KPI option. This is one that'll be judged solely by the UMA community team. Just the UMA community in itself. And this is the one that wins the hearts and the minds of our community. And then the last one is the best use case of UMA's new long short pair contract. This will be judged by the UMA community, by the UMA team in itself. So that's a quick little discussion around the prizes. And I'm also really excited to announce that we recently published an article yesterday saying that UMA is now supporting Polygon. We've got a long list of other layer 2 scaling solutions that we're going to be launching on over the course of the next few months. But the first one will be with Polygon. And in the spirit of collaboration, they've given an extra $1,000 to any of the winning teams. So for the KPI options and the optimistic oracle, if their solution was built using our Polygon enabled contracts. So that's really nice of the Polygon team, and really excited and humbled by that. All right, very simply, for anyone that's never heard of UMA, what do we do? And I'm trying to make this as quick and easy to understand for anyone. It's a lot more complicated than this, but the one-liner that I've summarized UMA in is we build financial contracts financial contract templates like the KPI options, the LSP, which we'll go into later, that is secured by a dispute resolution layer. So these two elements are the two really like powerful elements that work together that encompass what UMA does. And if there's anything that you want to take away from what UMA does today, those are the two very important points that I want to highlight. And we'll go through like some of the examples of how we kind of marry these two aspects together. So introducing the specific products that the prizes will be about today. The first one, what is a key performance indicator or KPI option? These are basically synthetic tokens that'll pay out rewards based on a verifiable bit of data in the outside world. I'll go through an example later, but this is a really powerful tool that aligns your incentives with an objective that you want to reach, whether it be with your community, the outside world. There is a lot of creative aspects that you can use KPI options for. The next one is our long short pair. It's a little bit more complicated than what I've put on the slide, and you'll see that through the example. But basically what it is, it's a synthetic asset that mints both sides of the trade, bounds the gains, and does not rely on any remargining. What this actually just means in like practical terms for developers is that this is a synthetic token that cannot be liquidated, which is a little bit more different to how other synthetic tokens are created out in the world. And then the last one is our optimistic oracle. I kind of call our optimistic oracle the most flexible oracle out there. But really what it is it acts as an escalation game between contracts when they want to request a price and or dispute a price. And so this escalation game is how our optimistic oracle handles information flowing through it. It can quickly resolve price request information. And the kind of key feature of what the optimistic oracle does is it only brings prices on chain when it needs to, and this is in an event of a dispute. So this is a quick high-level overview of those products. We're going to run through a couple examples of what you can do with some of these, and kind of just to kind of get a mindset of how we've used them at UMA before, or what hackathon members can, or hackathon hackers can use them for. So a quick example of how you can use the KPI option. It's a very simple example. It's not a perfect example, but at least I will attempt to kind of give a powerful illustration of what you can do with it. Let's say, for example, you want to reduce rainforest degradation. And let's say arbitrary number, it's a rainforest is degrading by 10% per year. What we can do is have environmental funds and public donors. In this case, we would be creating these options, donate some funds, mint a bunch of KPI options, and give those option tokens to the members of society that would be the most suited to be able to actually have an impact on that actual outcome. In this case, can be conservationists and kind of the managers of wealth of kind of like rainforest management. And so let's say there are $10 million allocated by environmental funds, and we mint $10 million of these option tokens, and we give it to the actual conservationists themselves. And we'll say as an arbitrary payout to pay out, and kind of the payout function is that if we want to get degradation to 0, it's currently at 10%, and we'll just draw a linear scale between 10% and 0%. And at the end of this, we'll measure how close we got to that goal. And so let's kind of run through how a payout would work for one of these types of KPI options. And say at the end of 1 year, the conservationists actually managed to get rainforest degradation down from 10% to 2%, meaning that they actually achieved 80% of that KPI. So the KPI was the reduction of rainforest degradation. So each of these options would then be worth 80% of the payout because they achieved 80% of that result. And so the $10 million allocated to this would pay out roughly $8 million, or actually exactly $8 million in this example. And this kind of illustrates how kind of, if you had increased it to, let's say, 1%, you got rainforest degradation to 1%, meaning you got 90% of the result, you can really increase the value of the payout based on this. Another example that we did at UMA, this is our very own KPI option payout, is that we paid, each of our options are worth the same linear scale, but based on the total value locked on UMA. And so between a current floor of $100 million, and if we reach $2 billion, there's a max payout on that. So these options are extremely powerful on where you want to measure a KPI and to find who'd be able to sponsor something like this and who'd be the most valuable person or entity or individual that can best move that KPI option. So one of the prizes will be based on the KPI option that wins the hearts and minds of the UMA community. So the long short pair, the other product that we're talking about today, it's a little bit more of a complex financially engineered product, but hopefully with just a little bit of kind of discussion, we can kind of make it a little bit more simple. Basically, what a long short pair does is you mint both sides of a trade. In other words, if I put in, let's say, $100 of collateral, normally you mint a synthetic and you would then have the long position if you held the synthetic, or if you had to sell the synthetic, you would take the short position on that. What the long short pair does is at the point of minting, mint both sides of the trade. So we'll have this idea of a short token and a long token. And you can choose, depending on which side of the trade you want to be on, sell either side. So sell the short token to be long or sell the long token to be short. Now, this is slightly kind of vague if we just kind of decide to kind of describe it in this way. So let's kind of run through two specific examples on different payout types, but that illustrate what we mean by this long short pair or for the LSP. So let's assume that we have a binary outcome. So either something happened or it didn't. And the binary outcome is either worthless or completely in the money. And so what we mean by in the money is that the token that you hold is worth something. And let's say a strike price is how we're going to determine the settlement. So either it's worth something if the expiry of the synthetic token expires below the strike price, or it's worth something if it expires above the strike price. And so running through kind of a numerical example, let's consider that I take a bet with John that I think in 3 months' time, ETH will be higher than $3,000. And so I would then, we would determine that the strike price of $3,000 for ETH, and we're going to put $1,000 as a bet on this. Now, at settlement in 3 months' time, I would hold the long token because I think ETH is going to be more, and John will hold the short token and be and think that ETH will be below that. If the price of ETH goes above $3,000, the contract expires with all the long tokens being of value 1, which means that all that $1,000 gets accrued to the long token versus the 0 that gets expired to John because it expired above $3,000. And the vice versa is true. So if it had expired below $3,000, the long token would have been worth nothing, and the short token would have been worth all $1,000. And this is an either or outcome. And so this is kind of quite interesting for binary outcomes like this. But what happens if we wanted to have something that is maybe a bit more on a linear scale? So the LSP operates on a range of payouts. So how would this kind of typically work? So John and I refine our bet after the first year of running these binary bets, and we think, actually, no, we can be a little bit more determined because we think that ETH will trade within a range. So there's somewhat of an upper bound. There's also somewhat of a lower bound. And we can then say, all right, if ETH trades outside of the upper bound or below the lower bound, we can handle that very similar to a binary case. But actually between these bounds is where something actually quite interesting can happen, where the value of the bet can have different payouts depending on how close you are to either bound. And so if I describe this, it basically amounts to that the price between the upper and lower bound will either pay out the long or the short token in various ways. And so this again might not seem very intuitive in that level of description, but let's run through a little bit more of an example where we can kind of put some numbers behind this. So the linear LSP on the price of ETH, let's say, is going to be set at a lower bound of $2,000 and on an upper bound of $4,000. So we think, okay, it's not really going to go outside of those two bounds. And we still put the same amount of money in of $1,000. And what we then can say is what happens when ETH is between $2,000 and $4,000. So if the price is, if I'm still the same long person and ETH is above $4,000, then the long is worth zero. Sorry, the long is worth the collateral and the short's worth zero. But if it's below $2,000, then the long's worth zero and the short's worth the collateral. And so if it goes outside of the bounds, it looks very similar to the binary outcome. But in between the bounds is where some of the payoffs change and differ slightly. So let's assume that the price is between $2,000 and $4,000. And for arbitrary sake, we can say it's worth $3,500. Then the expiry price is some ratio between the upper and lower bound. And 3,500 is closer to the long upper bound. And so if I held the long token, my $1,000 or the $1,000 bet would be worth $750, whereas the short token would be worth $250. And if you move the settlement price or the actual end expiry price closer, let's say if it was in the middle, then if ETH at that point was $3,000, then each long and each short is worth the same amount. And so because you have both sides of the trade, it makes the combination of payouts a lot more interesting. And because they're bounded, there is no need for liquidations or remargining because you have both sides of the market at any given point in time. So these are just two quick examples of how the LSP would work. There are some other more interesting use cases when you use options and yield dollars to kind of combine them into range bonds. We've recently just published an article around that. If you wanted to get more into the weeds of how you can use this LSP to really kind of create new and interesting synthetics. So I'm going to hand over to John now, who's going to run through how to use the dispute layer and a little bit more of a kind of in a description plus run through some of the demo aspects. Over to you, John.
All right. Yes, I'm going to talk a little bit about the optimistic oracle. Basically, if you think about an oracle, in a lot of cases, we've gotten used to just asking for prices or something that has a continuous data feed. But what you get out of the optimistic oracle is something that's really powerful and flexible to answer any kind of verifiable question. The demo that I'm going to show is going to be kind of traditional. It's going to rely on an ETH/USD exchange rate that you get from the oracle, but it could also be extended to be much more complicated. So, you know, if you wanted to get the ETH/USD exchange rate, but only if ETH was above a certain dollar value, you could ask that. If you wanted to get it only if, you know, it's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Las Vegas and Mercury's in retrograde, you could ask weird questions like that. It wouldn't make any sense if it was a continuous data feed, but if you're just asking questions, this actually works just as well for that as anything else, which is kind of neat. I'm going to share my screen real quick and walk through the tutorial here. Are you able to see my screen?
No, just give it one more go.
All right, let me see. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to walk through an example contract. It's a really simple one. It's basically a smart contract that's hooked into the optimistic oracle where you can deposit your ETH in the form of wrapped Ethereum and withdraw it based on a USD dollar value. So you put some ETH in, and then you say, I want to withdraw this many dollars of ETH. So you needed the oracle for that. I'll pull up the demo. I did a little bit of this prep earlier. We're going to be doing a Ganache local instance, and I already migrated all of the UMA contracts so you can use it. So that's what's going on over here. Just saw the results of the migration. And I'll actually run the demo script and explain a little bit of what's going on under the hood here. So this is going to step through. This is all just like Web3 script calling the local Ganache instance now. It's deploying the optimistic deposit box contract. It's making sure that the price feed that we want is registered with UMA's system. So if you want a particular price identifier, it's not that hard. You can just add a new price identifier through UMA governance, and we could walk you through that if you have an idea for a new one. Make sure the collateral type is also whitelisted, and then just deploys everything. You put ETH in the box. And then when you want to withdraw, you put in the withdrawal request, and the optimistic deposit box makes a call internally to the optimistic oracle where it requests a price. Then somebody, it could actually be the person making the initial withdrawal request, is going to propose a price. In this case, they're saying that ETH is worth $2,000. That is not disputed. We kind of fast forward after the dispute period, and that price is settled, and they're able to withdraw 5 ETH because they wanted $10,000 worth of ETH. What would happen if that price is incorrect is anybody could come in and say, you know, ETH is not worth $2,000. That's inaccurate. They can dispute it, and that goes up to the longer and kind of more the settlement layer that we call the DVM, where all of the UMA token holders come in and vote. And so any price request that you put in is going to have the full security of UMA's entire market cap, even if it's something really weird. So ETH USD is a common one. You would think like, okay, you need good security for that. If you wanted to make that weird request about Las Vegas temperature and whether Mercury is in retrograde and the ETH price, that would have the same level of security, because ultimately it can go to this final dispute resolution mechanism. So that's really powerful. You can sort of think about applications where you're verifying complex off-chain computation, compound questions, a lot of stuff that you would have to bake into the contract itself traditionally. You can now do off-chain with full security. And one idea that I came up with recently, which I'm kind of excited about, is kind of complicated investment strategies. If you're running a DAO, you can bake these strategies into a document that lives off-chain, but you can verify it on-chain with the optimistic oracle, which is kind of neat. I want to show a couple of other things too, just to get you thinking about interfaces. So this is an interface for minting and you know, creating covered calls. These are a couple of live contracts that we have. I'm going to go to the Uni covered call because I have a little bit of Uni in this wallet. I can go over here and just really easily mint some new calls that I could then sell on Uniswap and, you know, make some extra money. Another cool one, sorry, the Zoom interface is getting in the way. Okay, another cool thing here, I could use the same Uni tokens to mint some Uni yield dollars. If I wanted to go through that, use like the Uni USD price identifier. You can see how many price identifiers we have. This is another sign of how flexible the system is. Pretty much any outside verifiable information you want, you can put into a price identifier to relatively arbitrary levels of complexity. So it's not just price feeds in here. There's also like kind of more complicated calculations for some of these. Just kind of click through, set an expiration timestamp for the future. This expires December 31st. Give it a name. Let's call this UYD. Set a collateralization requirement. Unlike the LSP, this actually is liquidatable. This is using another contract type called the EMP. So for that, you need to have like a certain threshold below which somebody could be liquidated. Put in some sponsor tokens, move the Zoom interface out of the way again, and then create it, but not actually because it's really expensive right now. So that's all of that. One last thing before I kick it back to Chandler. We have these launch repos to make it easy to launch contracts too. So what I just showed through a user interface, you could also do by a script, and you could plug in your different parameters in here. You could go into the script itself to change some defaults. And we're going to have one out for the LSP really soon. So if you were a little bit overwhelmed by the LSP, look for the launch LSP repo probably next week. And that should make it a lot simpler for you to deploy these. All right, back to you, Chandler.
Cool. Thanks, John. So yeah, as you can tell, really simple to kind of just deploy the optimistic oracle. There's a couple of UIs for creating some options out there. Also a synthetic builder and a bunch of launch repos. All of this I'll link for any developers that want to use these tools, and I'll share them with them on our Discord. Just a quick caveat: the LSP and the Polygon launch instructions will come soon. So if you are particularly interested in that, please let us know, and we'll share the how to get started with that as soon as possible. And then one last thing, we're hiring at UMA. We've got a bunch of open roles at the moment. Just a quick one around some software engineers, smart contract engineers, and a launch engineer. You can read about this afterwards, and it's also on our AngelList site. There is a talent referral bonus. So if you're not necessarily one of these members, but know someone that might fit this particular role, we pay up to 1,000 UMA tokens, not $1,000 in tokens, but like 1,000 UMA tokens for a referral. And there's kind of a vesting schedule on that, which is quite cool. And for anyone that wants to know what it is like working at UMA, we publish something that kind of mentions a little bit more about what it is like to work in UMA at the moment. So I encourage reading that if you're interested. I know there were a couple of questions that came through, so hopefully we have enough time for some Q&A. But that's it from our side. Thanks very much for the opportunity to chat to you guys, and really looking forward to some of the really cool projects that get built.
All right. Should we go through? I think we have about 3 minutes left. We could try firing through these questions from the chat.
Absolutely.
First one's for you. Any details about the range token?
So the range token, well, we're calling them range bonds. So they're a combination of a yield dollar, a put option, and a call option. You package those together, and you can use the LSP for that. So it's just a combination of using some financial primitives to build together. So build together these range tokens. So yeah, we have an article that's published on that. It's on our Medium. If you're interested, we can share that with you at the moment.
Cool. Is the LSP contract prize not eligible for a Polygon bonus prize if you do an LSP on Polygon?
Yeah, so at the time of chatting to the Polygon team, we didn't have the LSP on Polygon at the time. This might change. So if anyone is interested in that specifically, we can kind of maybe put together that bonus. But at the time of discussing it, we didn't have the LSP on Polygon at that very point in time.
I think for how are the options priced, depends on the option. Call options, for instance, I think we look at Black-Scholes and then use that to kind of set an initial price on Uniswap. Links to the other articles on the LSPs, I will share those. What happened to the Mark Cuban bet? I don't think that was ever like finalized, the details of it, but if we were going to implement that now, we have a price identifier that's coming out soon that the working title is binary query, where you could just ask like a regular question. So you would write the details of the bet and ask like yes or no, and we could give an answer to that. So that's probably how we would implement that. And that would work for any kind of like random proposition bet like that too. Bitcoin outperforming S&P 500. Yep, that's an easy one. That could also be a binary query one. You know, you could do like a combination of like an S&P 500 price feed and a Bitcoin price feed, but binary query seems fine for that. And anyone can propose or dispute, yeah, human or bot. And who watches it is really kind of up to whoever's putting the product out there. You want to make sure that your product's secure, so make sure somebody's watching it. If nobody's watching it, then bad prices can come through and your product can go sideways. So, you know, make sure that somebody's watching it. And if you need like humans to look at it, you can set a long liveness period. If you like don't want to run bot infrastructure, you could say like, I can dispute this for like a day and then just like check, you know, at least once a day or something. So, you know, really depends on the product.
Nice. Went through those questions rapid fire. Thank you guys, John and Chandler, for running this workshop. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for coming. And yeah, if you guys have any other questions, you guys can find them in the UMA Discord channel. So yeah, have a great day.
Oh, there's one last question if we have time. What's the incentive to vote? You get voting rewards. So if something goes to a vote, which it only does if it's disputed, if everybody like agrees on the price or at least doesn't dispute it, that's fine. If it does go to a vote, new UMA tokens are minted, and you get some of those if you voted correctly. So if you voted incorrectly or you didn't vote, then you don't get any of those UMA tokens.
Okay, great. Thank you guys. Yeah, again, hope everyone had a great day. Great workshop, and yeah, reach out to them on the Discord.